I'm very happy to see you online today, whether you're in Zoom or on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, any of our channels. So welcome to the talk today. The Eros platform is a global community dedicated to exploring the power of Eros as a path to deeper connection, creativity, and personal growth. Today, we will be exploring one of the sutras with Aubrey Fuller, who is really one of the lineage holders of the sutras. And so I'm really thrilled to introduce Aubrey today. She is a deep researcher of the feminine and brings her knowledge of feminine wisdom to her teachings. Aubrey is the holder of the women's movement, fearlessly guiding women into the path of Eros and liberation. She is a senior instructor on the platform and the lineage holder of the Eros Sutras. Aubrey has been walking the erotic path and practicing orgasmic meditation for 15 years. And there is a way that Aubrey can translate the sutras in a way that really gets in deeply into the bones. She has a very subtle way of translating the sutras. And every time I get on a call with Aubrey about the sutras, I always get something deeply from it. And so I'm thrilled and happy to hand you guys over to Aubrey for today's talk. Go ahead, Aubrey.
Hey guys. It's actually 17 years. I think that's an old bio.
17.
But we have only had the sutras for 6 years or something like that. So whole new world after the sutras came out, right? Okay, hello. Good to see you guys. Hi, Lucy. How's it going? So yeah, I want to do a sutra with you guys today. If you were in art school with me, this is how I teach our Eros guiding. You get to know the principles book in particular, the volume 1 really well. And then when you're working with someone, you scan through and figure out which sutra you think would be perfect for them in that moment. And so I often do that. Like I'll do that for myself just kind of on a daily basis. Like, what sutra do I need to look at today? But I also like to do that on these Zooms and stuff to kind of like scan and feel into what this particular group is like calling for, I guess. And so this was the one that I came up with today. It's called Intimacy Dissolves Conditioning. Can everybody see that? Okay, cool. So this one is it covers a lot. It's kind of high level in a certain way. You could derive like 17 different sutras from this one, like you could take any one part of the sutra and then go find 6 other ones that have to do with that one part of this one. It's kind of like that. And this is one of our most controversial ideas. This is one of the most controversial ideas that we've been teaching on this path and at One Taste for the whole time that I've been part of it. This is one that gets us in trouble for sure. This is one that gets what you could call an immune response from many a person. But it's also it's also one of the core things about this path that makes it so unique and compelling, because there's something about this particular principle that is so real and honest and true to what it actually is to be human. And I think it speaks really to a deep part of all of us. And there's some part way back here that knows this is how it really is. And then, the kind of way that we're socialized would have us think this is very not how it really is. And so that there's that, incongruence and kind of an intense wrestle there between how we've been socialized and what our core being, how our core being would probably operate were we to feel free and, be able to live as like separate beings, which really is what this path makes available to people. And so, you could just have this in place of our waivers. We could just put this, we could just be like, read this. If you're into that, you don't have to do this, but if you're not like gonna freak out because this is what we're doing here, then you can take our classes. Thumbs up. So this could just replace our waivers. Yeah, let Eli know. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. And then and we'll do it kind of Aubrey Sutra study, Aubrey and Courtney Lepupsky. She's not on here today, but Sutra study style, which is like I'll read it to you guys. I'll talk about it a little bit as I go, and probably in 15 or 20 minutes, I'll open it up for discussion, questions, that kind of thing. All right, so intimacy dissolves conditioning. Oh, actually, you know what? Just it's worth noting this one is actually not from Principles. It's actually from volume 4. It's number 8 in volume 4. So just to like be really transparent with you guys, so that you can feel like this is a really safe space for you. All right, intimacy dissolves conditioning. Intimacy is a faculty that imposes no conditions other than the reception of another. I mean, just that right there. Do you know how upsetting that is to so many people? Like, that's saying you don't need a whole bunch of conditions, relationship forms, anything in particular to just go straight to intimacy, whatever intimacy means to you. Like, you could just go there. You could just go there. You could start there. It's a lot like orgasmic meditation. I remember so many different ohms where back in the day, when we had a lot of ohm circles at One Taste and everything, and a lot of people taking classes who you weren't maybe part of a class that someone took, and so there were always new people coming in, and so I would often have the experience of being like, "Hi, I'm Aubrey. Want to ohm? I'm Bill. Let's do it." Or like you're getting into the nest and you're like, "What was your name, by the way?" And so ohming can be like that. I mean, you can also do it with somebody who you've known for 50 years, but like there's that feeling of getting right to the point. That's a finger, like you have the steps, but you're basically getting like finger on clitoris within the first few moments. And that's kind of what this sort of characterizes this path. It's like, hey, let's go right to the place that we're all so deeply hungry for. Let's just go right there. It requires no commitment, no agreements, it being intimacy, no special status, no kindness. It requires only the choice to be in connection with another person. It requires no external conditions to know what is true. Those conditions are negotiations for whether or not we will be willing to be intimate, but they are entirely incidental to the process. Okay, so those conditions are negotiations. The conditions are negotiations that we may have with someone for whether or not we are willing to be intimate with them. But those negotiations, those conditions are entirely incidental to the process. So controversial. It sounds so pretty, but really, when you think about it, more often than not, they are only the demands of our historical or biological conditioning, demands on ourselves or others. So all the different, this is categorizing, all of the different things that we think we need in order to feel safe enough or comfortable enough or whatever enough to open into intimacy with another person. This is characterizing all of those things as incidental, and having originated from our historical and biological conditioning. They are not like hard, fast things that must be in place for you to open. This is saying you actually can learn how to open without any of that if you want to. We can, in fact, face the conditioning, decouple it, and prevent it from ruling us. That is what this path is. That is what we are doing here. That is what we're doing, because we want unconditional freedom. Like, people who are attracted to this path are attracted to a path to unconditional freedom. Sadly, more often than not, what passes for intimacy is enmeshment, a subtle form of hostage taking. In this dynamic, we grow smaller rather than bigger and more available for our lives. And that's kind of how to identify the difference between an intimate relationship with someone, like a truly intimate relationship with someone versus a hostage taking kind of situation with someone. If you're both growing, or either of you are getting smaller rather than bigger and more available for everyone in your lives, then you are probably more in an enmeshment situation than an intimacy situation. This kind of conditioned relating, focusing primarily on this one other person, is a subtle form of an extension of our own ego. Like, I instinctively hate that, but I also instinctively know that's so true. Like, I think no matter how controversial this stuff is, you just know that's true. Like, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Of course it is. You know, my significant other, my whatever, you know, of course, it's like an extension of your own ego. It does not bring us closer to accessing the state of mind we seek, which is more akin to the breath than it is to any gripping. That's really pretty. That's really pretty. More akin to the breath than it is to any gripping. So, you know, that kind of has me go back to the enmeshment thing. It's like real intimacy with someone is going to feel like breathing. And enmeshment will feel like gripping to something. It does the opposite of what true relating aims to do, which is to dissolve the sense of a separate self. So a lot of times, you know, this enmeshment, all these different forms that we kind of put around us and other people in order to get to the intimacy, actually end up, the name of the sutra, right? Intimacy dissolves conditioning. Intimacy dissolves a separate self. Like real intimacy has you feel more interconnected, more of the interconnected nature with all things and your place in all things. And that enmeshment kind of intimacy has you feel like your selfhood gets actually reified and reinforced, and you know, you're like, you are like this and I am like this and we are like this together, and we are not going to let those definitions move very much. Enmeshment gives our separate self the illusion that the other person will provide us safety or refuge from the world by allowing us to stay away from it. So this one can be really tricky, because it can really look not like that. Like, it can really look, like, it's interesting so for me, it's like just having, it doesn't even matter how that person particularly behaves, but just like having a boyfriend or like dating someone or whatever, I immediately have to contend with the feeling that like their presence in that form in my life, in that form, is a kind of buffer between me and kind of the naked, right up against it, right tucked in right into the pocket of my life, you know, like they become a buffer between me and that level of intimacy with my life. And it's not even their fault. I'm not even trying to do that. It's just like that's something that happens for me as a woman. I think this is a very common woman conditioning. Some other women here may experience that. If you don't, maybe we don't relate there, and that's fine. But I think this is a pretty common thing. And I think men experience this in a way too, in a slightly different way, but also totally, you know, it's like that person provides, you're like, it's kind of funny. It's like, hello, everyone. I found a person. They're willing to co-sign on me being cool enough to spend tons of time with, make out with, and basically say, I'm awesome. Co-sign. Everyone, look at my co-signer and know that at least one other human being in this world is willing to publicly go on record saying this person's cool. Like, it's kind of funny when you think about it. It's like we're just so used to, you know, drawing our validation from these forms, you know, that it's like it gets blended into everyday reality so deeply that we don't really think about it, but it's actually kind of funny when you really think about it. You know, until you're like in crippling relationship addiction, and then it's like maybe not so funny, but even that can be funny eventually later. Totally. If you ever been to a 12-step meeting, it can be hilarious later, you know. And so, but remember, if the ego is anything, it is isolation. Only now we're in isolation with another body. And so, you know, it's like that place where our sense of self is always going to kind of try to separate us from other people and kind of isolate us into one definition of who we are. And it likes to try to control, you know, like it connects to the tumescent mind and the rational mind, and it likes to kind of try to control everything so that everything can sort of stay static and in place and not too dynamic and not too chaotic, because then it couldn't control everything, and it couldn't control maintaining a really static identity, because that's safe, like that feels comfortable and safe to do that. And so a lot of how we relate and do relationships is just now we open the self gate just enough to like usher someone else in there and be like, okay, now we're going to do the same thing that I was just doing, but now together. So now we have an identity together, and so it's me against the world, and now it's me and you also against the world, you know. And so it's just it goes back to that part where it says, which is more akin to the breath than it is to any gripping. And so always just coming back to like, you know, in any moment, you could always come back to actual intimacy with someone. It's going to feel like breathing. It's going to be breathing. It's going to be breathing and not gripping. All true things perpetually dissolve the forms that would constrain them. I love that. All true things. So truth in all of its expressions, all true things perpetually dissolve the forms that would constrain them. Like, it's cool because it's like, and this is one of those spots in this sutra that would lead you to like 17 other sutras about the truth and relating with the truth and stuff like that. But it's basically saying, so like initially a form might express a truth. You know, you might have like a ton of attraction with somebody, and leaning into that might be an honest admission that there's just a lot of arousal there, and you're going to try to figure out how it wants to be played with and expressed, and there's a lot of truth in that. And so then you get to go into a form perhaps to find the expression of truth in something, but the nature of something true is that it's going to dissolve that form from the inside out, because it's like trying to contain something, you know, nuclear or something so potent that it literally dissolves the container that it's in over time. That's how that appears to me, that piece, which I just think is really pretty. Anything that requires or demands a specific form rather than merely allowing forms to arise should be questioned. I love that. And what actually happens is the opposite, which is deeply upsetting to me because of the implications of it in the world. But it's saying, so like when I say what happens is the opposite. So anything that requires or demands a specific form rather than merely allowing forms to arise should be questioned. So, but what ends up happening most of the time in the world is anything that is free, that asks to be freed of forms gets questioned. Anything that aims you toward unconditional freedom, sovereignty, truth, the shifting dynamics of relating that are always moving and always dynamic, that's what gets questioned. It gets questioned, and it gets projected upon, and it gets demonized, and it tries to squish it dead. And so, you know, always like the path of the erotic practitioner is learning, like it's like getting your eyes on to be able to see through all of this stuff to the truth of what's happening underneath, and then standing for it like in whatever way. And it could be like as simple as, you know, a conversation with your friends who's denigrating that approach, like that sovereign approach to life in some way, and actually standing up for it in that conversation. Or it could be, you know, like having a revolution, you know, and everything in between. But erotic practitioners got to stand up for this stuff because it's so hard to see. And the world is so not built in accordance with these principles of like sovereignty and unconditional freedom, especially when it demands that the form be held irrespective of shifting dynamics. So it continues to say you should be suspicious when it demands that the form be held irrespective of shifting dynamics. Questioned, not suspicious. I've added that in there. Questioned. Forms in and of themselves are good, provided they are there to serve a deeper purpose and not demand that the deeper purpose serve the form. And just that last line, that's the whole path in a line, you know. Practicing that is the whole path. That's the whole game in a way, you know, like practicing having forms, like forms of relating with people, with yourself, with life, serve a deeper purpose, not demanding that the deeper purpose, you know, supply the form that you're really attached to and gripped to with enough energy to survive, basically. Because the deeper purpose is the thing that's providing the juice, right? And so we try to force it to stay, like a simple example is just like a, you know, like a married couple, sex dies, something needs to shift in the form. Maybe it's not even a divorce. Maybe it's just like, it could be, I mean, it could be anything. It could even be more interior dynamics. Like it might not be some dramatic external thing. It might not be like that, but like probably it's going to have a lot to do with sitting down and telling some like really deep truths to each other, maybe even some really old ones that haven't been said in a very long time. You know, these are the kinds of things that turn the sex back on in a relationship, you know. And so unless something like that would be an example of like having you're shifting, like maybe your form is not being super honest with each other and mostly keeping things up here in the world of appearances, just kind of chilling up here. And shifting the form for you might be like breaking through some major membranes, going down into some truths that neither of you really wants to go into because it's like nauseatingly intimate and intense. And then the, you know, and then the deeper purpose and the deeper like electricity and power in the underneath of the relationship could actually freaking get turned back on and fill the form with beauty again and richness. But you know, what we try to do is just get really mad that it's like that and not really look at the deeper reason for it or do the work to turn it back on. And so that's kind of the, you know, that's the other way. That's trying to force the deeper purpose to serve the form and just insist that we just stay like this and hunker down for another decade till we can't stand it anymore, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. So I think someone put the link to this in the chat. So I'm gonna unshare it, and if you want to refer to it when we're chatting, it should be there in the chat to refer to. And then we can just kind of open it for questions, thoughts about any particular lines in the sutra. I love when people bring up certain parts of it that really stood out to them, or ways that you're personally relating with this one, or things like that.
Great. Thank you so much, Aubrey. If you have a question or a comment, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. We have a comment from Marai. She said, such gratitude for today. This is hot. I see this talk is recorded. Okay, so I want a dear friend to also receive this transmission. In what way might the recording become available?
I actually have no idea, but I love, Marai, that you
YouTube.
felt the hotness. What'd you say, Shan?
YouTube. Sarah's platform YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thanks. Maybe toss that link in there, Shan. Or yeah.
Great. Okay, I'll go ahead and post that on there. And then Dana, go ahead.
So when you said, Aubrey, and I was thinking about what you said yesterday on the Women Are Power call, like that, when we clear that rules and ways of relating, like such a practice, then we are infinite. And so like we are infinite. So getting our erotic eyes on, that really hit me this week when that was said. It's like from the ground up. So it's really like, it's such an internal thing. Like I don't, like it's so freeing because there's so much approval. So and I'm trying to, like, I can't capture all the things that struck me, but it's really like we are infinite and everyone's infinite. We're always dancing and there's so much spaciousness and we get to create, and it's really an internal, we are the creators and touch. So it's like this is the best place to be. It's like not finding anyone wrong, or like I thank God, hearing 4 years later, I think of this and it's like this is this a baseline, it's the erotic where there's space, and we are so deeply connected. And once you know that and your own um like then that's all you want to do is free yourself, and you don't even need to free other people, but your own devotion. And I just feel like thank goodness, I went through that enmeshment and I know what that is. And it's like, and now it's like you untangle that thread and there's no shame, no blame, but it's like it's so freeing when you realize that you can. Well, so I guess this is the main thing I wanted to say, like, and Marianne Williamson says a shift in perception, a miracle. And I have those eyes now, so I see that within and without, and I hold that deeper possibility for everything, for me and for everyone, because it's our perception, our erotic eyes. So I just want to say thank you all for walking me home and being with you all. This is the work. So thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Love that. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. We'll go ahead and go with Marai.
Yeah, I will have to hop off in a moment, but what you said about this, oh, now it's me and them against the world, that's so at home. And I'm like 8 years out of my last significant other relationship, and I've been in a continuous, yeah, I so want that, but maybe not. And like today really brings something around, like, what if my greater being actually continuously knows, no, there's something else, and doesn't mean that. I mean, I have enormous experiences of intimacy, and still this thing of that one significant other is running somewhere, and I have totally experienced enmeshment, and okay, now finally you and I, and everything is fine, and of course totally it's not. And the thing about that, it's not needed to have this like, I'm going to read the sutra, this part several times. I took a screenshot, and that it's not needed to have the safeguards or the rules or the conditions in place. So really, I mean, that's when I feel this is really me, when I just open and connect and am intimate with another. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think it's like, it's not about not having forms either, right? Not that you're saying that, but you're having me think about all the beauty of forms too, like they're wonderful, and it's not about, what's that religious renouncing. It's not renunciation. It's just freedom in and out of them, and it's like, I feel like the most culturally we play the game of relationship in the way that this is kind of describing, more like enmeshment. And it could be that what would a liberated relationship game with another person look like? How do you free them and free yourself every day in connection? And that ignites the creative brain so much, because it's like so different than what we're taught. And I think that's actually so beautiful and such a gesture of real love for someone to even consider that and try to live that way with someone, and
I know one couple, which they're my like kind of superheroes in relationship space since 20 years, and they met and when his love of his life just left him, and they got to know each other, and she just had received a almost death sentence, like an incurable lung disease, 3 more months. And so they came together with, well, if this other woman comes back, I'm gone. And yeah, I'm also likely gone within this time because of the illness. And every day they asked them, one of them would ask the other one, would you spend the night with me? They wouldn't have, they wouldn't go into this routine even a couple of years later. So she's probably now the longest survivor with this condition. Maureen McCarthy is her name. And they would keep not taking each other for granted, but continuously, one of them would just spend the night with me, even as they had moved in together.
That's so beautiful. I love that. That's gorgeous. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Marai. Next, we'll go to Russell. Hi, Russell.
Hi. There's a book I'm reading called The Immortality Key, and essentially there's a shift that he's just discussing in the book about who has the authority to decide if you can be God or be present. And this sutra does the same thing. It's like sometimes there's a form that we consent to being in so that we're not feeling isolated. And if we use our own authority to let that form dissolve, then we can be intimate with anyone, regardless of whatever anyone else says. And that intimacy creates the absence of being isolated, which is what we're afraid of. Generally, I'm afraid of not being included. And if I'm in charge of my own intimacy, then I can be included anywhere I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It's like this is for the 99% and not the 1%.
What do you mean?
That anyone can be intimate. You don't need a certificate or a piece of paper or someone else's approval.
Right. But you do have to develop the skill set because our culture really teaches you how to not be intimate. So, anybody can, and it's become a specialized skill these days.
Well, it's available to anyone that wants to become more intimate with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think landing in the location of real intimacy, like, it teaches you from the inside out too, So yeah. Thanks, Russell.
Thank you, Russell. And then we'll go to Instagram. There is a question from a cousin John 3 that says, can the Om be a couple's exercise?
Oh, cool. Shifting gears over to Om. Yeah, definitely. So orgasmic meditation is always a partnered practice. It's always done with another person. And there's a stroker and a strokee. The strokee has to have a clitoris. The stroker just has to have a finger, ideally the left index finger, but even that is actually somewhat negotiable if that one's missing. We've had this in the community. And so there's a stroker and a strokee, and they can be in a couple partnership, spouses, whatever, that kind of thing, or not. It could be a friend. It could just be another practitioner of orgasmic meditation who you feel comfortable practicing with. But yes, it's always a partnered practice, and couples benefit deeply from it. It's definitely a really great addition to any partnership.
Perfect. Thank you, Aubrey. And then there's another question. Someone says, the line, all true things perpetually dissolve the forms that would constrain them. Can you say a little bit more about forms and what does something like that look like?
Yeah. So, the really broad, it's like, I said to Marai, like, it's not about avoiding forms. Like, you can't avoid forms. Like, we're constantly in forms. We're in a form right now. We're in a call. We're on a Zoom. There's a certain, kind of containment to this experience. There's a, set of um, things that define the container of this experience and define this particular form of relating that we're all as a group engaged in right now. There's a computer, there's a topic, um, there's a sense of, connection. There's, a platform where these things exist on, right? Like those are all forms. And then this sutra in particular, it really is talking about all forms, but it's kind of this sutra and a lot of the sutras talk about relationship forms specifically. And so a relationship form is like, Yia is my friend. Yia also was part of this path a number of years before I was. And so she's also a mentor to me at times. Those are two different forms of relating that Yia and I share. And then like, Shannon is a sister on the path. That's a form between us. She also came into this path after I did. And so in a non-condescending way, I look to her as like, someone that I would, if she needed any mentoring or guiding or anything like that, I would be there for her for that. But Shannon also has shown up for me, like on an emotional level as a sister on the path. So those are two forms of relating, and then there's, in this talk, I talked a lot about romantic forms of relating or kind of like significant other forms of relating or, whatever you would want to call like coupleship type thing. So that's a whole form of relating. And so when it talks about, dissolving it, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being with someone in a particular form. Let's just say you've been dating somebody for 2 years and you're in a romantic form with that person and you kind of do all of the typical cultural couple things and you have all your pictures on Instagram and maybe you live together and maybe you got a dog together and you've met each other's families and you have like shared things and kind of all the typical like couple things, cultural couple things. And then there's a truth, like there's some kind of a truth that's arising from sort of the under the floorboards of the relationship. Maybe it's a desire. Maybe one person feels overly like constrained by the relationship, or maybe there's a desire to go to another level of intimacy and they don't know how to express it or whatever. And so there's something, and this is how life works, this is how desire works, this is how Eros works. There's something that comes up kind of under the floorboards and it begins to emerge in the relationship and it kind of shakes it around, and to the extent that those things get communicated with a lot of care, but also without flinching from it or trying to keep it shoved down, is the extent to which that relationship form is able to kind of be dynamic and move to actually like have both people grow as much as possible and flourish as much as possible. And sometimes what can look really threatening to the relationship is actually to express it would actually ensure the health of the relationship, in fact, but it's like, it's challenging practice, and then if it doesn't, and then those things just get shoved down and not communicated, because you don't want to mess with the form. You want the form, you want your Instagram pictures to be freaking cute, and you don't want anything to come in and mess with the form of your relationship because this person that you have established this person as a source of validation for you, and no one's going to fuck with that. Nothing, not even anything arising in them. No, no, no. And so then you could lock it down, and then that will cause the form ultimately, like that's a truth that will dissolve it from the inside out, in a not fun way. So it's going to dissolve it from the inside out and shift it anyway, but that there's a fun way to do it. I mean, fun, it's still intense, but it's more fun. And then there's a not fun way to do it. And that usually ends up that can be kind of explosive, or, that's when you have like a breakup. I think that's why that term got created, breakup, because there's an actual breaking feeling because there was stuff that wasn't shared in real time,
Beautiful. Thank you, Aubrey. Are there any other questions out there on Zoom or on social media? Go ahead and send them in. If you're on Zoom, you can go ahead and raise your hand and we'll put you on live. Harold, you got something for us? Yeah, there you go.
What's up, Harold?
Yeah, the top line, conditioning. Yeah, these are cultural layers. You can peel that like an onion. I start from a different vantage point. I start from truth in communication. It's an honest communication that allows the path toward intimacy. And truth in communication is a very tricky subject, because it opens up always a huge can of worms. I personally think without continuing search for truth within the communication of a relationship, intimacy cannot go any further. It becomes stuck at a superficial level. I felt that's how I felt during the entire reading of the sutra. The way that comes across to me. I lived in 3 or 4 different cultures, and peeling away that onion is almost an easy game. It's personal honesty and communication. Notches this up, makes it harder. But I would assume that the rewards are more than worth it. For me, they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think they are. And I really do think most people would agree, except it is really hard to play this way when you're not when you're not like connected to something deeper, and you don't feel full. Like if you're starving and really lonely, really isolated, you don't feel connected to something bigger, the sense of a calling or a purpose or something like that. It's pretty much impossible to engage this way with people, because you're so starving, and so one cool thing about forms is that those conditions and those forms, as soon as the desire arises in your heart to have more connection in life, like a real desire, then the conditions might begin to arrange for you to be able to have that, and forms of relating may arrive for you to be able to get nourished enough to then be able to play like this. I definitely
Yes.
the need to get nourished.
So it's I wouldn't show up. If I look for more connection, I wouldn't gate crash a wedding looking like a hobo. I would gate crash looking like I was invited. So yes.
That is the most ridiculous metaphor. I love that.
Well, how else would you communicate when you gate crash a wedding, right? You got to act the part to get the communication going, right?
That's funny. I like that.
Thank you, Harold. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's see. If not, let's go ahead and, let me just check. Dana, you got another one for us before we open?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say, the thoughts in our head, it's just really like a moment to moment, like it's just so inside us. It's never outside. And like that first line, it's like we can be here now, right now, with all of us. And that's what I love about our Sangha, because it's so nourishing that we get out of our heads into our hearts, and into our souls. And that's like a timeless, eternal, nowhere to get to. And we're always intimate with ourselves or others. Like it's to the degree, like it just like it can be like that. Like it doesn't take like it like a whole like we can wake up in a second and see everything differently, get our eyes on it. It's like everything changes because it starts with our seeing and our knowing and feeling, our opening to limitless love and really feeling the love. But a lot of times people are so jaded. It's like it's here now. And so I just want to say thank you all. You're all like my community, my family. I'm grateful.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Dana. And with that, we'll go ahead and take some reflections. So if you have a reflection, go ahead and raise your hand and I will put you on. Matthias, I wasn't sure, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Let's see, let's go ahead and take some reflection. Shannon, go ahead.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hi, Aubrey. I wanted to thank you for your generosity and how much love and wisdom you pour out on all of us every time you speak, especially about the sutras, because you're so intimate with them that you can be intimate with us with them. And I'm grateful for all the forms that you and I have together. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Shannon. Me too.
Thank you, Shannon. Okay, and let's see, Hasham.
You did threaten to talk. You
I
did.
did. I did. I told a friend that I was going to talk today. So I thought I'd jump in and just say, I think overall, I just really appreciated the talk today. I think like that was one of the things I had to work in my mind is how the intimacy can grow in the different forms, and it's like I was on a family trip and I was just watching a movie and I was just noticing like, oh, there's just such a way where, intimacy is so limited to a certain form. And there's just a whole range that you just miss out on. So getting to explore that range, I think you really nailed it and expressed it really well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hasham. And let's see, anybody else with the reflection? Let's see. Okay, all right. And then with another reflection, we'll go ahead and call it a call. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. That was a really beautiful sutra reading, Aubrey. She always gives the most beautiful transmission of the sutras. And so continue to come back onto the calls and join Aubrey. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about the sutras and really learning how to start to weave these sutras into your relationship, into your lives, because they're just so rich, like Aubrey said, every single line is just packed with, with awareness and practice that you can bring into your lives. I am going to post on here what is called our erotic artist track program, and you can actually start to study the sutras on your own with our online courses and bring them into your lives and how to be an erotic artist. When we talk about an erotic artist, it's how to really make your life as art, and the reading that Aubrey did with relationship, that is an art form. How do you live in dynamic relationship with a person so that you change when the relationship changes and you always keep the relationship alive? And so all of that you can learn how to do by coming onto these calls and also by taking these online courses and study it yourself. So the link is on the chat. We'll also provide the link for those of you who are streaming in. And thank you for joining us on the call today. We will see you tomorrow for the Eros community call. We'll do more updates on legal and PR and how that world is going. So thank you so much for joining us, you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.